Alright, this is the third 10-minute bit regarding object snaps, and now I'm going to show you in fact why you develop the habit for a shift right click and why you understand to use some snaps and not others, and why 2D and 3D are very similar but can be very confusing depending how much screen space you have. So you see a lot of you drafting on one window and not seeing yourself in 3D. You're looking down in what's called a plan view, the top view if you would. In a parallel projection, we'll talk about perspective and parallel projections, but that's what's going on. So what I'm going to do now, start again, turn my snaps off. All right, unfortunately I didn't save out that drawing. I'm going to go now right away to layer, because I'm going to make this center line layer. I'm going to make that have a thickness of 0.3, and I'm going to make the object layer, which was turned off, have that with a thickness of maybe 0.5. Again, lines have no thickness, so every time you slide into something like this in AutoCAD, you really got to tell yourself that, yeah, I'm just doing this for the sake of helping my eye. Lines do not have thickness. In mathematics, points do not have any presence. They are just telling you the spot. So when I click on the line weight here, you see that kind of thickened up. I clicked on it, I can hit delete, click on something again, hit a regen, R-E-G-E-N is a kind of good one to kind of clear your screen. Left click that. I have no idea why that is not. Those are kind of ghosting right there. Zoom, extents. I'm going to draw a box bigger than what I think. Rectangle, or or a line with an offset. So I'm just going to do L for line. I've got all the snaps off. Line from here. You can see that I have a. I'm going to draw a line from there to there. There to there. There's my line. Okay, I'm going to erase that off. And I'm going to now draw it again, L spacebar, right? I had nothing on the plane, so I'm just hitting the line here to here. And now I can click it and say LI for list. And you realize that it has the same beginning and ending elevation, which is what we would hope. There's a couple things you can do. You can draft in 2D in different elevations. That's if you're doing something called a loft or a set of contours, more or less. You can do that. You can change the elevation on what you're drafting. So you can type in ELEV, and now the new elevation might be 10. Now without any snap, I'm going to go from here to here to here to here. And if I do LI for list, click that, it's got an elevation of 10. I'll point out that realistically this concept of elevation means nothing until you've defined your coordinate system. Y'all don't care, but way back when AutoCAD tried to take out the elevation command, and people that were not my age at the time, but my age now at the time, in other words, are probably about 70 or 80 years old right now, maybe 60 or 70, they had a conniption and they brought a lot of these commands back. So very often you'll find it's pretty hard for these programs to sunset a command. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and show you this concept of drafting in 2D, looking at it, but adding actually some elevation, and that is using the point filters, which is part of the Object Snap Shift Right Click menu on almost any program. So I'm going to click line for line, and now when it says first point, I'm going to hit Shift Right Click, and I'm going to actually go to the point filters. That is the .xy. In other words, the dot and the x, or the x value and the y value of that point there, and a z of 1. Shift right click. Point filters, the .xy of this point and a z of 2. Shift right click. The point filters, the .xy and a shift right click. Sorry, .xy of this, and give it a z of 3. Shift right click. Point filters the .xy of that point, a z of 4. And now we can either go to the end point, or I could go shift right click, point filters .xy, shift right click the end point of that, and make it 5. hard to see it when you're looking at it, something like that, but you can use something called Viewports. Viewports is the command to put a couple of viewports on the screen. So I'm going to do that. Viewports, and I'm going to make 2 viewports that look like that. In other words, 2 cameras set up into the screen, and then over here I can, and we'll see this later on when we bring in different toolbars, I can bring up the view toolbar, and over here I can click over here and make that view maybe like an isometric here, right? And so you start to see, or maybe a front view. And I don't really like you to kind of get used to using these for your views, and we'll see why later. It kind of changes what is the X's and the Y in there. So, but the fact is, you see that what I've done here, and if I highlight something here, you see it gets highlighted over there. That's the use of the point filters and just in the first bit. Now, when you've got a couple of things here, let's say I wanted to go from the X, Y of this and a Z of that. So in other words, I'm going to draw a line now, and I'll go ahead and change my layer now, LA for layer. Make my current layer now object. This is pretty common in a lot of software. I remember this in MicroStation pretty much. Line, shift right click, point filters, the .xy of that, of the end of that, to shift right click, point filters, the z, .z of, shift right click the endpoint of that. And you notice what it did. It actually drafted a line, right? And it's going to, right now, without a snap, it's going to go to my current elevation, which I think we set to 5. So let me hit a list. Last, great thing to do using last, and it went from one place to the other. The elevation is 10, I think, ELEV. I set my elevation at 10. So that is what the point filters are really about. Though very often you're going to see very creative ways to do that. But keeping track, now I'm going to finally show you where that apparent intersection comes, and we'll see what it does. I'll set my elevation now to maybe 15, and I'm going to say align from the shift right click the apparent intersection of that. Apparent intersection of that. And you notice that will now be out on my current elevation. Right? Well, maybe not. We'll have to see what it does for that. So the apparent intersection actually brings a 2D right in here. So we'll try one more. Let's just go ahead and grip edit this, move it around a little bit. So that is obviously not crossing on top. So we'll do a line, shift right click, the apparent intersection of that to here, and see where it puts it. List. What it does, it must put it on the, it must select one. Well, I don't know if it's the higher or the lower, but it actually does the, in other words, the place that's directly above the apparent intersection. Now that's going to be very much dependent on where your camera is set, so you can think about how confusing that can get. But once again, let's just see if we can do the extension of a 3D line, if we think about extensions. So line, shift right click, the extension of that, right? And we can extend it out. Now, if you think about it, it should be extending in 3D. So we can extend it 20. And that's your point there. Let's see if that in fact is, if I do a line here from the end of this to the end of that, if that's a 3D line, list, last, there you have it. So it actually, that extension, so you start to see how these object snaps work in both 2D and 3D. You got to be kind of aware of how they work. So that's really all I'll do for snaps. You learn to play around in 3D and realize that point filter is huge. You sort of see that in programs like Sybil 3D, .northing of, .easting of, point number, .elevation. There's all kinds of uses of that. And those in 2D/3D, just be aware that's why you're developing the habit of shift right click. This is almost the last or the next in my series of just do what I say. Thanks for listening.